All right, so today I'm going to talk about modeling a character head in Maya. So to start off, we're going to import the reference images in the orthographic view. So I'll press spacebar or go to this for view button here. And to start off, to import the images, you go to view, image plane, and import. And just make sure that you're looking at the correct orthographic view here. So I have the front and the bottom left, and then the side and the bottom right. So I'm going to import the front view image here. So again, it's view, image plane, import image, and I will find the head that I want to model here. Then I'll do the same thing from the side view, which is again looking in the side view. I'll go to view, image plane, import image, find my side view image, and I want to just test something here. Ignore this step just for a moment. Okay. I wanted to see if I wanted to change the transparency of these images. I think it'll be okay at default here. But if you want to make these images, your orthographic images, translucent so that you can kind of see your models a little bit better, it kind of depends on your reference image if you need this or not. But if you click on the image and then go to the attribute editor, this third slider right here changes. So at 1 it's at 100% opacity, at 0 it's at 0 opacity, so you can kind of fade it in and out. I think this will be okay basically at 100. I might fade these down each just a touch, but not too much. Okay, and so now what I'll do is I'll select both images and I'll press R on the keyboard. I'm just going to scale them up, and I'll scale them by doing the center scale box right here, dragging the center scale left to right, scaling it up. Press W and move them up above the grid just so the grid is out of my way. And then from here, I'm going to move my perspective so that I'm looking kind of towards the front a little bit. And what I'm going to do is I'll first select the side image and drag it to the left to pull that out of the way. And then I'll select the front image, and then I'll just drag it backwards to get it out of the way that way. And so hopefully what you'll have here is, if you have an object in your scene, you want it to show up above your reference images. And so if I drag the reference images the wrong way in either direction, so if I dragged my side to the right instead of the left, you see in that side view down there that we can't see the model anymore. So in order to fix that, just make sure that you've kind of dragged your reference image the correct way. And so I'll just delete that object. I was just making that object to demonstrate that. So now what I want to do is I want to create a display layer for my reference images. So to do that, you're going to look for the channel box layer editor tab. This for me is up to the right here, and it's to the right for me because I'm in the Maya Classic workspace, if you look up here to the top right. So if that's not showing up for you, you can also find it under Window, General Editors, Channel Box Layer Editor, right there. And so what you want to do is just drag and select both of these reference images, and then under the Display tab, I'll go to Layers, and then Create Layer from Selected. So what that's going to do is going to create a display layer with both of the images on it. And so I'll double click it where it says Layer 1 to rename it. And then I can press the V button for visibility. And then one thing I really like over here, this third box that is unchecked or is empty, it's just the default right now. If I click it once, it'll be T, which is like a wireframe, and if I click it again, it'll be R for reference. And so what that does is it makes it so the image can't be selected, which is really helpful. So now we can turn the visibility on and off, and the reference images are kind of out of our way. If we want to make any more adjustments to it, I can just click this R button one more time, and now we can make adjustments. And I'm glad I said that because I noticed that my front view, and just hovering my mouse over the front view, I'm just going to press spacebar to bring it to full screen. And I can see that my image isn't totally centered along that center line. And this is going to be really important to have it centered because we're going to be mirroring geometry from one side over to the other. So I'm going to be modeling on the right side and then mirroring the geometry over to the left side. And so I'm just going to move the reference image over just a little bit so that her face is centered in the screen there. I'm just looking for the middle point of the nose, and then I'll also look down the nose and down this kind of crease in the upper lip just to kind of see, like, is this mostly centered here? And so once I'm ready to lock it, I'll just press this once for T, once again for R, and now it's locked and I can't select the reference image anymore, which is great. So from this point, I'm going to save my scene, and I've done a few demos of this, so I'll just do that. And so we're ready to go. So I'm going to move from the channel box layer editor to the modeling toolkit to kind of prepare for the next step. Also, to prepare for the next step, I'm working on a laptop, which is a bit of a small screen. But what I'm going to do here is I want my perspective view to be big, but also I want the front and the side view open kind of at all times here for this demo. So I'm just going to grab this double dotted line right here, this next to my perspective view, and just drag it over because I don't really need the top view. I'll just click it all the way out. And so now I kind of have a 3 view where I can see my perspective view up here, but I can also see my front and side here. And ready to start. So for this model, I'll start with just a plain polygon cube. So I'll just click polygon cube, and I'll scale it up. And I'll move it vertically. Make sure, looking at the front view, the only way you should not move this is left to right. So just be sure just to only move it kind of vertically right now. And also you can see, this is good, the model's in front of my reference image right now, but I want to be able to see the reference image still. So I'm going to go for each tab here, or each of my orthographic tabs down here at the bottom, I'm going to go to shading and then go down to X-ray. So shading, X-ray, and that makes it so that the model is translucent. So I can see both the model and the box. But then up here in the perspective view, I'm going to keep it normal. And just to help everyone out here, I'm going to put this button, which is just wireframe unshaded. You don't need to do that, but it just makes it, when you click this button right here, that the model always has like a wireframe projected onto the shaded model there. So that'll just kind of help you all see what I'm doing here. So I created a cube. I'm going to look in the front view first. I'll press R. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to scale up the cube so that it outlines her skull, essentially. So you can see here, and I'm not worrying about the hair. I don't need it to cover all the hair. And the ears and the nose will be extruded out later. So we're only worrying about the skull kind of area itself. So you can see the jaw lines there. And I'm kind of thinking about the head, top of the head. So I traced it from the front view. Now I'm going to trace it from the side view. And again, we're just doing like a broad, just broadly speaking here, kind of tracing it out. So something like that. Don't need to get it absolutely perfect because we're going to make adjustments here in the next step. So we just have a cube, no subdivisions or anything, just a plain old cube. So now to add subdivisions, what we want to do here is kind of what people did back in the day, is they would go into the attribute editor and add subdivisions right now, but they would still be stuck with a cube and they'd have to be dragging vertices and edges and all that stuff to give the head a round shape, which was a massive pain. So so what we do now is just with the cube selected, just press smooth, and then it rounds out the shape for us, which is a nice way to start here. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to work on the right side of the head right here, and then I'm going to mirror over. So I'm just going to model one half of the face and then mirror over to the other side. So press Q, oops. So I'm going to go into face mode, and I'm going to delete the left side of the face right here. So just drag and select, delete the left side of the face there. And so from here, oops. Sorry, I'm working on such a tiny screen right now. Okay, so from here, I'll kind of model on this side, and then when I'm ready, I'll just press this mirror button right here where my cursor is. And if I press that, it'll just mirror over to the other side, and so it'll bring it over to both sides. And so the reason I like to work this way is there's less geometry for me to worry about right here. Again, you only have to worry about modeling one side, so it saves a ton of time that way, obviously. There is also working in symmetry mode, which is in the Modeling Toolkit. If you go under, let's see if I can find, oh, here it is, the Symmetry tab. You can turn on symmetry, and that way, if I pull a vertex, you know, it'll do it on both sides, all that good stuff. Yeah, and it's just my preference to do the mirror geometry type way. It's just a little bit of a cleaner way to work. Sometimes things can get a little messy with the symmetry mode. Also, a lot of the times I'll like forget that symmetry's mode is left on, and then I'll go to model another project, and it'll take me like 5 minutes to figure out, you know, why it's not extruding or something like that, you know. So I created a cube, made it box around her head a little bit, then I smoothed it. And so now I just want to shape this a little bit. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go into the orthographic views. I'm going to do very little modeling from the perspective view here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click and go to vertex. And I'm just going to go, I'll kind of go, well, I want to start with this first line right here. So select, you can either select this edge loop right here by shift and double clicking, or just right click and go to vertex mode, select all those vertices. So that's what I'm going to do, is I'm just going to drag and select those vertices along the eye line right there. And so what we want for this model is I want this line to go right through the center of the eye. So I have that set that way. And so now I'm just going to go through, and I'm going to grab, just looking at the front view, 2 vertices at a time and drag out the faces. At no point am I going to even worry about dragging one at a time here, because this is making a nice kind of rounded shape here. And if we start getting too nitpicky here at the beginning, it's going to fight against that, and you're going to end up, you can end up with a pretty square head doing that. So yeah, this is a step to follow along exactly with me if you can. So drag and select those 2 vertices, press W. I'm just going to drag it up just a little bit. I'm trying to imagine where her skull might end up there. I'm just going to do it 2 at a time. So dragging and selecting, I'm not just clicking like this, right? I'm doing a big old drag and select. I'm just tracing where I think the skull is using the reference image, and relying very heavily on the reference image. This jaw, I'm just going to move it in just a little bit here. That one's something we're going to worry about in a minute. So we'll come back to that one. So now I'm going to move over to the side view here, and I'll press spacebar. So the first thing I want to show here on the side view is I want these 2 vertices, when I drag that, to be the jawline. So just have it go something like that, where it's going through the center of the jaw. Next is this line right here, these 2 vertices. So I'll drag and select those 2 vertices, and I'm going to make that where the jaw connects with the neck. And I'm going to come back and address these 2 vertices here later, but let's just kind of keep moving around the head. So right here, I'm just going to move these out slightly. Keep in mind the nose and this area, we're going to use extrude to kind of extrude out the nose. So this doesn't need to, you know, outline like that, right? We're just thinking about the skull itself right now. Oh, whoops. See, I selected that vertex by mistake there. So make sure that you're making clean selections here. And don't add subdivisions too early to this. We want to work with a really low geometry for as long as possible. So that actually looks perfect right there. So grabbing these two vertices, we're going to make it so that this goes along the edge of where the cranium meets the neck. So just kind of feel below your ear and the back of your head where the cranium meets the neck, and just kind of try to feel that out, and then look at the reference image and see if that kind of lines up. So get it looking like this. And so from here, and again, I've just been dragging two at a time, and that helps kind of keep a rounded shape here. And so now I am going to just worry about this vertice right here. So I'm going to drag and select that vertice like that. Press W, and I'm just going to move it back a little bit so that it traces the jawline a little bit more. And also I just want to keep this edge loop, you know, just kind of flowing nicely. And then I'm going to select, so I'm going to move from that vertice. I'm going to select this vertice. And I want to just check it in all three views here. So you can see here that I might want to bring it down a little bit in the side view. I'm just thinking about her jaw. And you can see here that in the front image, that looks pretty good. And so what I want is this edge right here is going to be her side cheekbone. Right there. And so I just drag that vertice so that it's kind of going along her cheekbone, going straight down into the jawline like that. And so from here, we've got our base mesh mostly. I think this vertice back here. So looking at the perspective mode, this is gonna be the front of her head. This is the back of her head. This is where the cranium is gonna meet the neck down here. So this vertice right here, at least for me, looks like it's a little too far in. And you can see from the front view, so I selected in the perspective view and I can see it in the orthographic view. The back of her neck needs to connect to the back of her cranium on that vertice. So I'm just gonna drag it out a little bit so that it lines up with her neck a little bit better. Okay, so that's all we need to do. Don't go into any more detail yet on this. This is not, you want to get these steps right here, so get it looking like this. But you also don't want to, this isn't the area to start micromanaging. The time for micromanaging is going to come, and we're just not there yet, you know? So get to the stage and file save. I like to save incrementally, as you can kind of see here. And saving incrementally can be really helpful. Like, let's just say your project gets a little corrupted or just something weird happens, you make a mistake. You can go, if you're working on head version 3, you know, then you can just go back to head 2 and you don't need to start over. You know, sometimes that can just be helpful. And also the Maya binary files, especially when you're just working on a simple model like this, it takes up like 10 kilobytes. It's just nothing on the computer space. So it's not going to eat up a lot of space on your computer by doing that. Okay, so now we're going to start adding edge loops. And so the way to add edge loops, and the most important thing about adding an edge loop before we start doing this, is we're going to be very deliberate about when we add edge loops. So don't just start adding a ton of them all at once. It's going to make your life really hard here during the modeling process. So the idea here is to create an edge loop and then have a plan for it when you make it, and then go around, check the two orthographic views and check the perspective view each time that you add a new edge loop. And then once you've done that, then you can move on to the next edge loop here. So there's two ways to add edge loops. There's one way, which is the multi-cut tool. So down here in the modeling toolkit, you can do multi-cut, and then if you hold down Control on your keyboard, you see it lets you do a vertical or horizontal, and you click, and it adds an edge loop, and it doesn't change the shape of the geometry at all. The shape of the geometry stays intact right here. You see that edge? It didn't move. So a lot of times that's great, and that's what you want. And we are going to use the multi-cut tool here coming up, but not now. So Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to Mesh Tools and actually use this enough that I'm going to break out this menu and drag it to the side. So Mesh Tools, and then this double dotted line right underneath it, just click that and it'll break out the menu for Mesh Tools. And I'll just drag it and bring it out to the side right here. So what we're going to use is Insert Edge Loop. So Insert Edge Loop, if I do it by default, is just going to work exactly like the multi-cut tool. Let me just... So by default, it'll look like this, where I click Insert Edge Loop. Sometimes you'll need to double click. And it won't work if you click within the object's face. You have to click on the edge, and it'll create an edge loop. And watch the top of her head. See, it stays straight right there. So by default, it works exactly like the multi-cut tool. But what we're going to do here is, for Insert Edge Loop, I'm going to go to Options. So click the option box to the right. And then I'm going to turn on Insert with Edge Flow. And so this is going to make it different than the multi-cut tool by turning that on. So Insert with Edge Flow, make sure that that's on. And so now, when I click, it's going to round out the shape when I create an edge loop. And so here, this is just tremendously helpful in modeling a character, because we don't want them to have a square head. You know, we want this to be rounded out. So I'm going to use the Insert with Edge Loop as my main tool here. And it's not going to come up for a minute, but I'm going to go ahead and introduce it, which is the Slide Edge tool. So I'm using the Insert Edge Loop tool just to add some edges here. And so the Slide Edge tool is also under this Mesh Tools option. And what the Slide Edge tool is I'll right click and be in Edge mode. And then you have to double click the Slide Edge tool right here at the bottom. And then a little message will show up probably right here, I think, where it'll say middle mouse button something or another. So just double click there. It says, okay, drag with middle mouse button to slide. And so what the Slide Edge tool does is it allows you can select an edge loop just by double clicking it, and then use your middle mouse button. So not a normal click, but your middle mouse button, and you can slide the topology around. And what's nice about it is, and it's hard to see right now, but it respects the shape of the geometry that you've already made. And so it's a way to kind of move your topology around without changing your model very much. Because normally if I wanted to move this topology around, I'd need to press W and move it. You see how it squishes like that when I move it in to the other side? So the Slide Edge tool, so I'll just double click it, and then I'll use my middle mouse button, and then when I slide it, you see it keeps its shape, more or less, you know? So that's the other tool that we're going to use a lot. Or the other new tool we're going to use a lot. So I'm just going to edit undo and get back to where we were here. So we're back to where we were. We had the cube, we smoothed it, and then just grab the vertices two at a time to trace the front of the head, the side of the head, and then I made a few little adjustments to like the back of the cranium here with that vertice. And then I changed this vertice a little bit to trace her jawline a little bit better and kind of go along her chin. One other thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and select this vertex right here that's to the right of her eye. And what I want to do is I want to go ahead and just press W. I'm just going to move that out just a little bit. And we'll go back to that vertex a little bit. We're going to start with the eyes, and the way we're going to start with the eyes is think about the skull, and we're going to worry about the eye socket, right? You know, which is, if you feel kind of around your eyes, it's larger than your eyeball, you know, like it goes, you know, a full ½ inch on either side of the eye. So I'm going to start by creating an Insert Edge Loop right here. So double click there, and I'm going to click and make an edge loop somewhere around here. And let me just make sure that, yep, edge flows on. And just gonna, it doesn't have to be totally exact, but that's pretty good. So what this is going to be is it's going to be the top of the eye socket, which also, if you feel the top of your eye socket, that's where your eyebrow starts. So think about it where the bottom of the eyebrow is or where the eye socket starts. So I made the edge loop, and now on the side view, I'm just going to drag that vertice so it traces the top of the eyebrow. Gonna bring this one down a little bit. I might need to check it from the sides here. All right, so we're getting this edge loop made that's going along the top of the brow, and so the main purpose of it is we're worrying about the kind of the upper brow area, but you always have to kind of do housekeeping when you make an edge loop here. So this one's kind of looking nice and even across, which is good. So it might not need too many adjustments, but I'm just going to check the front view now. And here I can see that I want, sometimes it can be helpful to select the vertex and actually a lot of the times it can be helpful to select the vertex in the perspective view so you can make sure you're selecting the right one, and then make the adjustments in the orthographic views. And so I'm just going to drag this one down a little bit because we're worrying about the top of the brow or the bottom of the eyebrow, if you want to think about it that way. So we can see that line is kind of this edge. Oops. It's getting the bottom of that eyebrow right there. Checking both the front and side view there, as well as the perspective, just to make sure things look okay. So that all checks out. Then we're going to get the bottom of the eye socket, which if you feel on your face is like a little bit, you know, it's a little bit lower than you might think. It's a little bit below the bags of the eyes right there. So going to right click, go to objects mode, insert edge loop, and then just click it in. And so I'm going to do the same thing where I'm going to check it in both views. You can see here that it kind of, for me, it's squished up in the back of the head here. So the first thing I want to do is I just want to select this edge right here, and I'm going to use the slide edge tool just to even this out. So I'm going to select this edge, double click the slide edge tool so that the drag with middle mouse to slide comes up. And then I'm just with my middle mouse button, I'm just going to click, and this takes a little getting used to because it's just a little curmudgeon-y in the way it moves, but I just want to spread it out so that this line evens out just a little bit. I'll do the same here if I can. Oh, it's not going to cooperate on that one. That's okay. So I'll just use the W tool and just press it down, just, you know, microscopic amount here. Okay, so all I'm doing there is I'm just evening out the back of the head. So looking at the perspective view, this is going to be, this vertex right here is where the eye socket meets the cheekbone. So I'm going to look at it in both views here. I'm going to check the side view first. I think it's going to come in a little bit like that from the side view. Kind of thinking about where the cheekbone is going to meet the eye socket. You know, so something like that. I'm going to check the front view. That actually looks pretty good. Okay. And so still thinking about the way I model is I kind of make an edge loop and then I worry about all the vertices on that edge loop and then kind of move from there. And so we have one more, oops, ignore that. So this vertex right there needs some adjustment. So the main thing with this one, let me just see. Okay, when I did the edit undos, it might have gone a little. I'm going to drag that down, so somewhere around there is probably good. Sorry, so that's that cheekbone vertex right here. So I'm going to go find this vertex right here, and I'm just going to move it straight up, because again, I want these lines to be relatively straight, and I want the edge flow to be good. So something like that. And so now kind of have those edge loops in. And so I want to make some adjustments to kind of get the eye socket. I want to mess with these three vertices to kind of get the eye socket started to be shaped correctly here. So we're only worrying about these three right now. And so this one's in pretty good shape to my eye. So now, and the top one's pretty good too. looking at it from the front, the side, and the perspective, that looks good. So the main one really is this middle one right there. The middle line that's going through the eye, that's on the edge of the eye socket. So if you look in the perspective view, it's right there. So here, I just want to drag it back a little bit, because I think it helps to see it from the side view. You know, that's kind of the shape the edge of the eye socket might make right there. Just a little bit like that. I'm going to check the front. And believe it or not, just in the front, it just curves in just a little bit, like this. Don't need to get too exaggerated with it, but it's, you know, something. It goes in rather than out like that. So something like that. Just pay attention to your, just trust your reference images. And so from here, I'm just going to grab these three, and I'm just going to bring them in just a teensy bit. Okay. So the only edge loops we've added are this one and this one, getting the outside of the eye sockets there. And you see, looking at all these images, that they line up pretty well with the reference image here. So now we're going to add two more edge loops, and it's going to be vertical this time. So one's going to get the edge of the nose, and then the next is going to go down the center of the eyes. So let's do the nose first. So I'm going to just go to Insert Edge Loop, click there, and I'm looking at my front image. I made the selection on the perspective view, but I'm looking at my front orthographic here. So I'm just getting the bridge of the nose. Let me try that again. You know what? I'm just going to do this entirely from the front view. So the nostril should go on. We're not worrying about the nostril right now. We're just worrying about the main bridge of the nose here. And so I kind of laid the groundwork with the edge loop. And so now I'm just going to go in and adjust some of the vertices here. So I'm going to start on this vertice, which should be where the nose meets the eyebrow. So I select it in the perspective view. Then I'm going to drag it a little bit in the front view. Same here, just looking at my reference image, selecting in my perspective view, adjusting it in the orthographic. And here, the chin, you see how the topology, it starts to get a little thin down there, particularly in the chin area. So I'm going to select, just kind of moving down the line of that edge loop we added. I'm just going to select this vertice right here. And I'm going to adjust both of those so that we trace the drawing. And I want it to have a similar thickness as the rest. So I'll just drag it out a little bit. Remember this vertice? That's in the back of the head right there. If you look, see right there. So I'm going to move it in the perspective view, but I'm keeping my eye on in the front view. You see, it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm just trying to get this entire edge loop to be relatively evenly spaced throughout. So I'm relying pretty heavily on the front view here because I think the side view is going to be okay for this. In the past, I haven't really had to make any adjustments to this in the side view. It's mainly about the front view and the perspective here. So that looks good. That's that main edge loop. Remember that for this edge loop, and I'll just select again just to kind of go over what we did, it's mainly about tracing the edge of the nose and making sure that this vertex connects with the eyebrow. And then this vertex, the placement isn't quite as important, but I'm just going to move it down just a shade there. So just make sure things are kind of even throughout. Remember that the slide edge tool can be kind of your friend here. So from here, I'm just going to save my work and go to object mode and then add one more edge loop. And so this edge loop is going to go right down, is going to be vertical right down the center of the eye there. So insert edge loop, draw it in, and you'll see here, you see how it rounded it out pretty nicely there? So we just need to make some small adjustments here. So I'm going to be selecting vertices, so right click vertex and selecting in the perspective view. So this is the middle of the top of the eye socket here. And it's already almost perfect here. I just, you just want it to line up with the top of the eyebrow. And then I'm just checking some of my old work here. Might want that to come down just a little bit for the middle of the eyebrow. So, but again, stay focused on this edge loop right here. I got a little distracted there. So that edge loop that I have selected here. So it looks pretty good in these top areas. Let's see the bottom of the eye. Let's check the bottom of the eye socket. So vertex, check this vertex right here. So we moved that one just a second ago. So we're looking at this one. So I can see that one's going to need to go down a little bit because I want the socket to be a little round. So I just dragged it down. Not really micromanaging it here. Here, that is already pretty nicely tracing the jawline. That honestly looks good just everywhere else, so it doesn't need a lot of adjustments there. So, next up, so there's that's all, we're done adding edge loops for now for the eyes. So the edge loops we added was this one first, that one second, so those were the two that we added. And now we're going to add, we added one for the nose and then one to bisect the eyes vertically right there. And so now that leads us to this point, which is now we're starting to get into the tricky part. This part takes a lot of practice a little bit, but there's, again, I was just doing very broad adjustments. I was not really getting into the weeds too much on that. So here, right click, choose face, then hold down shift, 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to select those 4 faces. And this is going to be the eye. So we have the eye socket and we're going to extrude in and kind of get the eye here. So under the Modeling Toolkit, press extrude. And then instead of doing the arrows, just do the boxes. For me, it's going to be the red box and the green box. Hopefully it's the same on yours. So I'm just going to bring it in here. Bring it in here. This is not going to need to be perfect right now. We're just kind of bringing it away from that edge. So, scale it way in if you can. And again, I'm not doing the arrows. I'm only doing the scale. And once you're done, press Q. And once you press Q, with those 4 faces selected, just press delete to delete out those faces. And from here, this is going to become the eye. And there's a few steps to this. And it might be a little bit of a mystery at first here, but it'll become clear as we go here. So I'm selecting a vertex one by one, and I tend to just kind of, I'll work clockwise here each time I kind of do it. And I'll start at the top. And what I'm going to do here is, so this first one, we're only going to worry about the front view. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag it in. And for this first set of lines, I'm going to trace kind of the outside of the eyelashes a little bit. And this isn't actually going to become technically the outside of the eyelashes here, because we're going to do some extruding magic here. But I've found in the past that that gives me the best results here. And it'll become clear hopefully in a minute. So notice here that I'm dragging them in and I'm kind of being even with them. I want these lines to all be even. You can see that this edge right here is a little crooked right there. And so what I might do is go into the vertex, and I might just go ahead and change this one a little bit. You see how it's like overlapping a little bit there? So I'll just press W. I'm just going to drag it in downward. And I'm going to do the same for this vertex right here that's connected to it. I just want that edge flow to stay even. Her eyes kind of slope downward a little bit there. And so that's kind of the reason that that's happening here. But remember that this vertex falls along that vertical edge that I want to have tracing the nose. Okay? So all we're worrying about is the front view right now. And that's good enough. I might just make a few more tiny changes here. So from here, from the sides, it's going to look a little wonky here, and so we're going to work on that. And so the next step here is we're going to create a sphere that's going to become the eyeball here. So I'm going to create a sphere, this primitive object there, and I'll rotate by pressing E. J as in joystick is the shortcut to snap it into place. So J to rotate, and it'll rotate 90 degrees and lock into place. And I want to rotate it 90 degrees because this these edge loops become helpful when it comes down to the texturing phases and things like that, because it gives you a line to trace and all that stuff when you're texturing the eyes to create the irises and the pupil and all that good stuff. So using the orthographic views, I'm going to position it. And the scale of the eye is really important. Oops. Press F to frame it up. You don't want the eyes to be too big or too small. And a little bit makes a very big difference here. So it's really important to try to get this part right. And it's definitely challenging. So I think that's about the scale we want. You should definitely feel, also it helps, I just feel my face a little bit just to see how large these should be, and for a lot of these features. And so we traced the, just to kind of recap, we traced the front of the eye outline, but we haven't done anything else yet. I haven't worried about the perspective view or the side view yet. So do this, trace this edge first, and again we're kind of going outside of the eyelashes a little bit, and then create the eyeball and place it, and kind of be careful when you place it. And we're going to make this into another display layer, so go to Channel Box Layer Editor like we did with the reference images before. And so I'm going to select the eye in object mode. Then under the display layer, I'll go to Layers, Create Layer from Selected. Then a new layer will be created here. I'll double click on it and rename it. And if you remember, this is the visibility. And then if we click this twice, it'll go to R, and so it'll become non-selectable, which is great. We don't want to select this eye anymore. We're worried about this object. So it'll be nice to be able to turn off and on the eye again. So if you're thinking like, hey, I don't need this step, you might. You know, it's pretty helpful. So, you know, try to do that step. And then, so from here, remember, I traced the front. And so now I'm going to right click, go to vertex, and I'm going to go clockwise again. So I'm just worrying about that, you know, one edge loop at a time. You create an edge loop, then you worry about it. And so I'm worrying about this edge loop. So I placed the vertices correctly in the X and the Y axis, but now we need to get it right in the Z axis, you know, going frontwards and backwards. So I'm going to go one vertex at a time. I selected the vertex in the orthographic view. Now I press W, and I'm just going to drag it forward. And I can press F just to see where it is in space, and drag it so it just barely gets in front of the eye. Okay, and all I'm doing, the only control I'm doing is this arrow right there. For me, it's the yellow arrow. I guess it was blue initially. To move it front and back, moving clockwise, moving to the next one, move it. This one I need to move forward to move it in front of the eye. Press F, and then you can toggle around and see how close or far away from the eye you are there. You want to keep it as tight as possible. Continue to move clockwise. Move this one forward. And again, I like to press F and just check my work there. Alright, clockwise again, moving it forward. F to frame it up, so that way I can see, get a good idea of how far ahead of the eye it is. You want it pretty tight. It's okay to give it a little space, but you don't want too much. I've seen too much look really weird. Press F. I moved clockwise again. Press this one, move it backwards. F to focus again. Oh, I might have placed my eye a little wrong here. Let's see here. It's good to find these mistakes early rather than later here. I think my eye needed to just be... that might be okay. Okay, so this one, so I'm going to unlock my eye, select it. I just need to make it just slightly larger. And I'm just going to need to quickly kind of go over my work again here. I just kind of noticed it was just a little too small. So this will go quickly though this time. But I do need to make sure to redo my work here. You probably won't have to do what I just did there. So just bear with me a sec while I fix this. So just one by one. Again, pressing F. And it's okay if these overlap areas are happening. That's, you know, that's going to happen here during this step. And it really, a big part of my methodology here, and just the methodology at large, not just mine, of modeling in Maya with these more complex shapes, is keep the geometry low. Do not add more subdivisions than you need too early. And measure twice, cut once, you know? So now this looks pretty well lined up here. I'm just going to select all the vertices from the side view that I did there. So it's just like a little drag select here. Yours might be okay, you know? I just want to drag mine back just a little bit. Just a hair. Okay. Whoops. Okay. Never mind. I think it was okay. So I just, never mind that I pressed edit undo. So I'm going to turn off the visibility of the eye. So we kind of trace the shape like that. It's good to test. Does it look good from the front? Approximately. Does it have a rounded shape? Looking at it from a steep angle or from below, does it have like a rounded shape to it on either side there? So from here, we're going to work on this eye some more and start to fill in some detail. So these are important steps. So this area is going to become kind of like the inside of the eye a little bit. So what I want to do, it's like a little bit of like a mind trick what's about to happen here, but it's not too bad. So insert edge loop tool. So make sure under the mesh tools, we go to insert edge loop tool. Then we're going to make an edge loop around here, around the eye. That's going to be relatively thin. Just kind of going around the eye like that. And after I do that, I'm just going to click on the front view. And with vertex, I'm barely going to change this. I'm just going to even out 2 or 3 of these. You know, I'm just trying to get that edge just to be pretty uniform around the whole thing. And you kind of want it to be about that thick. And so from here, let me just check my work a little bit carefully. It's just really nice to make sure that everything's looking okay before taken any steps forward here. So just always just double check your work. Make sure things look good from every angle. You see how I'm always keeping my camera moving, I believe. So have that edge loop right there. Didn't do anything crazy to it. I just wanted it to be evened out, you know, and looking approximately okay here. I might just grab this vertex. Maybe the one below it. Pull it out a little bit. Okay. But nothing crazy there. Tiny adjustments I was making. And I wasn't overdoing it. You know, it's just a couple moves. So hold down shift and hold down shift and double click to with faces. Sorry, right click, make sure you're in faces. Select a face, hold down shift, double click. Get that all of those faces selected in that little edge loop that we made. So we're going to extrude from here. And from here, find the right arrow to pull it out that looks okay. Mine looks a little janky, but again, I did the arrow. I might do the red box to just pull it in a little bit here. And so this is going to require a little bit of work, most likely. Oops. But this is, we're just pulling them out, and we're going to make the adjustments from here. So I'll press Q. And do that. And for some of your models, this might come out a little cleaner than this one on that step. I'm going to turn on the eye again. So the first thing that I like to do on this is I'm going to start on the outer edge and then this edge right here. Just make a few little adjustments on here and then move in to some of the inner edges. So this edge right here, I'm not going to do anything too crazy with it because we want this to be steep, because looking at the eye here in the front view, it's pretty steep right there, and then there's like a fold of skin that kind of comes in there. It's pretty rounded here, and then it levels out a whole lot if you feel your eye right around here. So we're just going to mimic that. This is the eyelid that we're making here, and so sometimes the slight edge tool can be helpful here, but I want to keep it steep. You know, not too steep, but steep up here. Sometimes the slight edge tool can be helpful. So under the mesh tools at the bottom, slight edge, double click, and if you do the middle mouse button. But again, I want this to be steep, so I might not even just mess with this. And again, that slight edge tool, the problem with it is it annoyingly really wants to snap into places here, but barely touching that. Okay, just coming back from an interruption here. So I think where we left off is we had extruded these faces and I was beginning to place the vertices. And so the faces that are selected right now are going to be the thickness of the eyelid, right? So the thickness of the skin and the eyelid are the faces that are selected right now, if that makes sense. And so what I'm going to do is go into vertex mode, and I'm going to do it one edge loop at a time, and then one vertex at a time within the edge loop. So I'm going to worry about this edge loop first, and I'm just going to go clockwise, starting on this vertex here. And I'm just going to place this on the inside of the eyelashes, so right where the skin meets the eyes. And I'm just going to do that for all of them from the front. So line them all up in the front view, and then I'll do that same thing I've been doing where I'll line them up front to back. So this is coming in a little bit. Make sure you're selecting the right edge loop, so it can be helpful to make sure that you're selecting the vertice in the perspective view. And again, I'm just selecting the vertices in the perspective view. It's going to be a bit of a mess in the perspective view. All I'm worrying about right now is what does this look like in this front panel view? So what is it, you know, is it tracing just where the skin meets the eye? All right, continuing clockwise. So get a little confusing. But again, just if you ever get lost, is this edge loop that we're trying to get, so just make sure it's that edge loop that you're working with. And I'm not moving any vertices at all that aren't on that edge loop. And I'm only moving them in the XY axis in the front view. Can be helpful just to hide the eye and just get it out of the way. And we'll worry about the perspective view in a minute. Okay, so I just went clockwise around and lined it up there. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on the eye. I'm going to do the same thing going clockwise around. But I'm going to do that same thing that we did before, where I'm just going to press the front back, so move tool, and then move it front back, nothing else. So the blue yellow, just get it right in on the eye one by one. We can do this all from the perspective view here, I think, unless it becomes hard to select. So that's one area where it's nice to have the eye on the display layer, because I can get the eye out of the way, turn it back on again, and select the vertice. Going clockwise here just to stay organized. That's the reason I'm moving clockwise here. There's no other reason for it other than I'm just trying to keep myself organized as I go here, because it's pretty easy to get lost in this if you don't, in my experience at least. So I lined it up in the front view, right? So all I'm doing is it's just front back to line up with the circular shape of the eye. Okay, so that one's in place. And so now we're going to worry about this edge loop. And once we get this edge loop, you'll probably be a little surprised at how much this already starts to kind of begin to come together here. So same thing, gonna working on this edge loop here. I'm going to, this is going to be, so again, this is the thickness of the eyelid right here. And this edge right here that we just worked on is the inside of the eyelid. And so we're going to work on the outside of the eyelid. So going to go into vertex. I'm going to start at the top and go clockwise. And I'm just going to worry about the front view first. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to turn off the eye. Or sorry, yeah, the eye visibility. And I'm just going to go to even turn off the X right here. And in the front view, I'm just going to line it up. So it's not going to be right on top of that other one, but it's going to be kind of close, just a little bit on the outside of it. So one by one, I'll just kind of come in the front view. And so this is getting me the XY coordinates. And then after this, we'll just need to get the Z coordinates. Let me make sure I'm selecting the right thing. That's looking a little wonky. Okay. So here, unfortunately, I am going to have to do the Z coordinates just because mine got so crazy there for a second. Again, I'm mainly just trying to worry about the front view, though. The only reason I went into the side view is that just things got so crazy, it was just hard to tell what I was even looking at. So when in doubt, just pull it way forward. That's my advice here. If it's like overlapping the way it was there, well, it's easier to pull it back into the model than pull it forward through the skin. So the idea is to get the front view looking kind of like this. So from here, I will go into the perspective view and again go clockwise, and I'm just only worrying about this vertical, or sorry, this in-out blue-yellow slider. And I'm just going to try to get the thin skin, the skin thickness to be the same along the entire eye. Kind of just trusting the work I did on the front view. So again, it's only that one arrow I'm going to be worrying about. Okay, so I'm going to turn the eye back on. Oops. And see where we left off. I can see that inner geometry. I might need to pull away from it a little bit. So I'm just going inside of the model here. And if you can see that edge loop right there, I'm trying to select. I'm just going to select the edge loop, press W, and with the yellow-blue arrow moving it backwards and forwards, I'm just going to move it backwards a little bit just to pull it off. So this is kind of getting inside of the body here at this point. And we'll work on that more down the road. I just want to kind of get it out of the way a little bit. So from here, I'll pull on the eye. And looking at this, you can see the eyes overlapping for me in this little area. You know, that'll happen. One thing to keep in mind is we're going to add subdivisions into this. So don't do the step I'm about to do here, but just to demonstrate what's going to happen in the future a little bit is more edge loops are coming. And you see when you kind of round out the eye, the areas that are where the eye is kind of protruding out, it'll fix itself quite a bit when that happens. So if your eye is sticking out of the skin, you know, don't stress about that too much. It'll get fixed, or it should get fixed. But again, it's just helpful to kind of continue to check the work here. So I'm going to turn on X-ray again. And this is kind of a process that just requires some patience. Again, we're worrying about the eyelid right now. So imagine what is the eyelid doing here. Just trying to look at our reference here, and even seeing it from the side is helpful too. It's not quite lined up perfectly here, but I can still see the shape that it's making here. You can kind of learn to make out the shapes here. From this side view, it's a little too confusing, where I would not start trying to move vertices around looking through that view, but I can at least kind of gain some kind of sense of what's going on here. And I do want this edge. I'm going to use the slight edge tool to just bring that back in. Oops, I keep pressing the A button. Ooh, let's see here. This one got past me. You see, so this one vertex I didn't get all the way on the eye, so I'm just going to select both vertices so I get the thickness of the eye there. Press W, move it in a little bit. It's going to overlap in this area up here, but that's okay. And so that's how you kind of start to shape the eye in, kind of the first steps towards getting the eye. And keep in mind, we're going to subdivide the mess out of this, but we're trying to keep the model as simple as humanly possible right now, and we'll kind of earn our way to the detail. Just going to check a few more vertices here. This is the stage to start getting finicky a little bit. So that initial step where we're building up the initial geometry, that's a stage where I think it's pretty okay to not get too obsessed with things. But this is a good opportunity right here before you start getting a ton of geometry to take advantage of the fact that there's not too much geometry to kind of throw you off the scent. And start getting things shaped the way that you want. So keep in mind the nose is going to extrude out of here. So right now I'm modeling an eye on a head without the nose, you know, so it might look like the eye's protruding out a little too far right now. But I got the eyebrow going, and keep in mind that nose is going to come out here. So I'm just going to change this out of X-ray. So we kind of have this looking at the side. And again, you can see the eye coming out of the bottom there. But if that's happening a little, you don't want it happening a ton, but if it's happening a little bit, then it's really not much to worry about, because as we use the edge loop tool, it's going to round things out. And as we add subdivisions and edge loops in here, the skin is going to come forward when we add edge loops there and fix that aspect. And so get it to this step, and I'm going to pause the video here, and in the next lesson we'll pick up the next steps. But just to kind of give you a preview of the next steps is I'm gonna, looking at this view right here, we kind of added edge loops here and here to kind of start to define the eyes, and then we started on the nose. And so what I want to do next is we'll do an edge loop here to bring in the base of the nose, a horizontal edge loop to get the base of the nose. Then we'll do a horizontal edge loop that goes straight through the mouth, and we'll start to work on the mouth. And so the hard part of the head, in my opinion, is kind of getting the eyes, the nose, and the mouth, getting the topology right, and then getting the shape of the eyes is the other difficult part. So what I just showed here with the eyes, I consider to be one of the difficult parts. And so one difficult part down here, and we'll move on to the next video and kind of tackle that next step in the next video.